Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome our official party? Thank you, everyone. Well, firstly, a very good afternoon to you all, and welcome to the campus, the Sydney campus of the SP Jain School of Global Management. Nice to see you all here. My name is Richard Collar. I look after the professional readiness programs and also the marketing function here at the college. And on behalf of our president, Mr. Nitish Jain, and his wife, Mrs. Bapsi Jain, we welcome our official party. First of all, we extend a warm welcome to the Hon'ble Arun Jaitley, the Finance Minister of the Government of India. We also extend a warm welcome to the High Commissioner, the Consul General, and all our other distinguished guests. Warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, as it is customary, we'd like to acknowledge that this event is being held on the traditional land of the Warrangal people, and we therefore pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. Before we proceed to the national anthem, sir, again, a warm welcome and the heartiest congratulations on your T20 win in Mohali on Sunday. It wasn't just a win, sir. I think we'd call it, in colloquial terms, it was a thrashing. And that, of course, puts India number 2 in Group 2. But as they say in the classics, there's a long way to go yet. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you to be upstanding for both the national anthems of India and Australia. Thank you very much, everyone. Please have a seat. Thanks, everyone. I'd now like to invite our President of the SP Jain School of Global Management, Mr. Nitish Jain.
Thank you, Richard. Honourable Minister Jaitley, Finance Minister of the Government of India, the Indian High Commissioner, the Indian Consul General based in Sydney, distinguished guests, students of our school, the SP Jain School of Global Management. On behalf of our school and our partners, EY, AIBC, and CII, I warmly welcome all of you to this wonderful event we have this afternoon. And in particular, I'd like to welcome Minister Jaitley. I understand that this is the first time we have a finance minister visiting Australia for bilateral talks. So let's applaud Mr. Jaitley for coming to Australia. I believe something hot must be cooking for the minister to come here in person. I hope that he shares some of these in his talks, in his speech. I can practically smell delicious Punjabi food served with top quality Australian wine, winning combination. And I wish the minister well during his discussions with the counterparts in Australia, and hope for successful outcomes, sir. The Indian economy has foreign exchange reserves of $356 billion US. So one may translate that to approximately 500 Australian dollars. To put that in context, Australia itself has foreign exchange reserves of $60 billion. The UK has foreign exchange reserves of about $160 billion. I'm not going to share with you China's foreign exchange reserves. It's pretty embarrassing. But I think what I'd like to highlight is that foreign exchange or foreign investment is pouring into India in a very big way. I'd like to think of it as a new resurgent India. And I think the topic for the minister's speech, which is reimagining the Indian economy, is very fitting for this very reason. I, for one, am extremely keen to hear what the minister has to say later this afternoon. As many Indians, I'm hoping that one day we will see double-digit growth. And I'm quite confident that with the leadership of Prime Minister Modi and Finance Minister Jaitley, that day is not too far away. Now, I will be remiss if I don't talk a few things about our SP Jain School of Global Management. And I know the chairman of our board is sitting here in the second row, and he will ask me to find a new job if I don't say anything. And given my limitations of finding a new job, I think I must comply, so please indulge me. Many of you who are visiting us for the first time ask the question, what is SP Jain doing in Sydney? And I'd like to just share a few words that SP Jain exists in Mumbai, of course, Dubai, Singapore, and Sydney. So we have 4 campuses, and we're looking to set up even the 5th one in the near future. So why does one school have so many campuses? Is it that we've come here fishing for Australian students or fishing for Singaporean students and so on? The answer is no. We believe that the world is truly global, and the global world needs a global business school that produces graduates that have a global mindset. And so when they come here to Australia, they actually understand how business is done in another country, and in this case, white democracy. When they go to Singapore, they understand how business is done in a Chinese country, and of course in Dubai, in the Arab world. And they also need to understand what's really going on in different parts of the world, what's going on, for example, in the Middle East. We read about it in the newspapers every single day. But how many of us truly understand that? And that, I think, is what differentiates our school from many other schools. Conventionally, schools were a place where you got knowledge. I go to school for what I know. But I think that is behind us these days. And I need to go to school for how to think, how to solve many tricky problems of the world. Let me share with you a real example of our school. In our BBA program, we have students from over 30 different countries. One of them comes from Syria. He actually lived in a refugee camp before joining the SP Jain program. And of course, we have many Americans who also are part of the same program, in the same classroom. So we said, let's have some fun. Let's get them to role play. So the Syrian became an American and vice versa. And we said, broker a peace deal. Isn't that really very interesting that you have two who actually at war with each other, but they're students in the same classroom, and they have to do this role playing? I think it's fascinating. And personally, I think that if we all got into the habit of wearing the shoes of the other side, we would solve many of the world's very tricky and challenging problems. I think the chairman of our board would be satisfied that I've said enough of the school and that I continue to retain my job. With this, I once again welcome the finance minister for coming to SP Jain. I think it is the first stop on his historic Australian tour. We are very pleased that he has chosen to come to our school and honored us, and thank him very profusely for that. With that, I would now like to invite High Commissioner Navdeep Suri to introduce the Finance Minister before he speaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jain, Honorable Finance Minister, Consul General Wana, my friend, Her Excellency Harinder Sidhu, the Australian High Commissioner designate to Delhi, the members of the CII business delegation, friends. I think the Finance Minister's visit to the SP Jain School is very timely and very important for a number of reasons. The first is that education and skills over the last few years has really become a very important part of the bilateral agenda between India and Australia. This is taking place at different levels, in vocational training, in university education, and in scientific research. We from India see Australia as a critical partner in the Prime Minister's Skills India program. We're working very closely with a number of Australian institutions in vocational education. We're looking at different models that are emerging, some in collaboration with the National Skills Development Corporation of India, some in partnership with private Indian service providers, some utilizing the facilities of the Indian technical institutes, the Indian training institutes around the country. And in my conversations with skill providers in Australia and vocational education institutions, I keep challenging them that you've got a phenomenal, high quality, low volume, but high cost model. That was great for Australia. Now you need to scale it up for the Indian game and bring it down in terms of costs that are affordable to the Indian pocket. And is that doable? On the educational side, sir, the bilateral dialogue on education takes place at the ministerial level. Last August, Minister Christopher Pyne took a delegation of 24 Australian vice-chancellors to India. And it is our hope that before the end of the year, we will receive our Minister for HRD to continue that dialogue. An important dimension of that educational exchange is the Indian students who come to Australia for studying. Last year, this number has gone back up to about 69,000 Indian students in various university campuses and vocational educational institutions. And of course, when we talk about Indian students, many of us recall some of those incidents of violence that took place a few years back. And I have to say that it's wonderful to see how both on the Indian side and on the Australian side, at federal level and at state government level, some really key lessons have been learned in how to minimize, how to address those issues as and when they occur. But hardly anything, and that confidence in Indian students to come back to Australia is really visible. A new development is that several Australian universities now have active collaborations and joint PhD programs with some of our leading institutions in India. The Indian Institute of Science has several partners in Australia, as do the IITs and the IIMs. In fact, during Minister Pyne's visit, Deakin University opened Monash University, in fact, opened a new joint campus in Mumbai with IIT Mumbai. Deakin University has had a campus jointly with the Energy Research Institute, TERI, in Delhi, and we hope that this is something that is going to gather momentum in the coming years. But the connections in education aren't just one way. We're also working with several Australian universities, taking advantage of the program from Indian Council for Cultural Relations to establish India chairs in Australian universities so that the study of India in Australian academic institutions can be deepened. We're working to bring visiting professors from India at different university campuses. One of the really unspoken stories of this relationship is the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund, sir. This fund is jointly supported by $65 million grants from the Indian government and the government of Australia, equally matched. They have funded 239 important research projects through competitive funding processes in areas ranging from clean energy technologies to nanotechnology, to something as humble as our chickpeas and our lentils, which are getting heat-resistant and drought-resistant treatment and being fortified with vitamin A and with iron so that they can meet some key nutritional deficiencies. That's one of the areas in which a lot of joint research is taking place, in fact, in the Queensland University of Technology. So I want to say that by establishing this campus in Sydney, the SP Jain group have added an entirely new dimension to this collaboration in the field of education. In the global environment that Mr. Jain referred to, they are demonstrating the capacity of India's own educational institutions to spread their wings, to emerge as institutions of excellence in their own right. A big congratulations for us because you become our ambassadors here as well. And now for me to have the pleasure to introduce the Honorable Minister to anyone from India, to anyone who has anything to do with India. I don't think that Minister Jaitley needs any introduction. He is the Union Minister of Finance, Corporate Affairs, and Information and Broadcasting. He's the leader of the House in the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament. He's a very prominent lawyer, one of the senior most leaders of the Bharatiya Janata Party. He was a minister in the previous NDA government from 1999 to 2002. He's also been a Union Minister for Defense in the Government of India. During his student life, he was president of the Delhi University Students' Union, and he's the recipient of numerous distinctions for outstanding performance, both in academics and in extracurricular activities. He was selected for the Outstanding Parliamentarian Award for the year 2010. He's an avid writer on contemporary legal, political issues and has written extensively in newspapers and periodicals. Honorable Minister, we're delighted to have you in Sydney. Thank you. May I invite the Minister to deliver the keynote address.
Mr. Nitish Jain, the distinguished High Commissioners for India and Australia, the President of the CII, other distinguished guests, members of the faculty of the SP Jain Institute, and I see a lot of young students here. Well, thank you very much, Nitish, to you and to the institution for having invited me on the very first morning that, along with some colleagues, that I am in Sydney. Our routine over the next 4 or 5 days, spread over 3 different cities, is going to give us an opportunity to interact both with the government as also with a larger body of investors in Australia. You asked me to speak on reimagining Indian economy. Well, we've set our targets reasonably high, and T20 is probably not the only area where we want to do well. As far as the economy is concerned, it's obvious that the world is passing through a very critical phase. It's passing through a critical phase because there's a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability. There's also a lot of volatility. And one of the key concerns has been that repeatedly across the world, global growth estimations have been lowered. And sitting through various meetings of the IMF, the World Bank, and other forums, I get a distinct impression that how long this phase is going to last, nobody really is sure of. And therefore, world economies are undergoing a very significant change. And nobody really can say, certainly we in India can't say that we are uninfluenced by this. There are some significant impacts which do take place. One of the obvious adverse impacts also is, and I'm referring to the adversities first so that we can deal with these challenges in the course of this discussion, that when trade shrinks, across the world, trade will shrink. And the shrinkage of that trade also has impacted us. Uncertainties in the market also impact us in terms of both stock markets and currency unpredictability. Australia itself has witnessed the parity as far as currency being significantly altered in the last 2 years. And then, of course, global demand has been adversely impacted. The result of all this has been that the lower regime for prices in terms of oil, commodities, metals, has had its adverse impacts on several economies in the world. Now, this is one area where, in India at least, we don't share that pain. The low price regime has helped India because we are net buyers of these. And therefore, this also provides to us an opportunity. How do we insulate ourselves as far as these global shocks are concerned? I think this is one of the most important challenges if we have to reimagine the Indian economy itself. But then if you look at the detailed breakup of the Indian economy, we certainly have a very successful services sector, which grows at anything between 9 to 10% annually. We have a manufacturing sector currently somewhat slow, but gradually improving. And adding to the global challenges, we've had an adversity as far as agriculture is concerned, because we've had 2 years of less than moderate rain, and that itself has impacted our agricultural sector. Not that our agricultural security, food security is impacted because we are still a surplus nation, but certainly it has caused agrarian distress. It has also reduced substantially the purchasing power of people living in the villages. It's in these circumstances that over the last 22 months or so, we've been really trying our best to give a boost to the Indian economy. I'm not unmindful of the fact that several factors of the past had impacted on India's image. There was some kind of a policy slowdown which the world was sarcastically referring to as policy paralysis. There was also some decisions which created unfavorable impact about India, decisions relating to taxation. And therefore, having learned from these experiences, what is it that is being done and requires to be done in order to reposition India? I think one of the obvious decisions we had to take was that we had to open the Indian economy a lot more. What is it that is sustaining the Indian economy today? Private sector investment is a little slow, private sector is a little stressed, and therefore we had to concentrate on increased public investment, which is something which we've done. We had also to rely a lot upon what Nitish just referred to, on foreign direct investment, which has significantly increased in the last 2 years. And we had to work towards increasing demand as far as the Indian markets are concerned. So I think the opening up of the Indian economy and sectors such as insurance, defense, railway infrastructure, and several others, which were erstwhile unavailable to foreign direct investment, has helped us. We've also removed the unnecessary conditionalities which were slowing down the foreign direct investment. And this, probably in greenfield projects, has made India one of the more sought-after destinations as far as foreign direct investment is concerned. The second important challenge was not only to improve India's image, but image gets improved by the fact that in actual operation, those domestically who do business in India and those who intend to invest in India go back with an impression that India is an easy place to do business. In terms of the ease of doing business, You are measured by the stability of policy. You are measured by predictability. You are measured by cutting short the time between your decision to set up an investment in India and the actual implementation of that investment. You need easy approvals, and you must need very fewer approvals. And in a federal polity like India, where you have the central government, the state governments, you need to go to multiple authorities, and frankly, it can frustrate a project. Now, I can't really claim that we've achieved everything in this regard, but I think there is a greater realization in India that in a competitive world today, not only attracting international investors to come to India, but also persuading domestic investors to stay in India, you will have to ease in your business processes. And that's an important work which is still in progress as far as India is concerned. As a part of this, I think eliminating corruption in decision-making in relation to projects, because corruption not only spoils your image, it dissuades people from investment, it adds to costs of investment, I think is an important milestone where India seems to be moving forward. For instance, today, in environmental clearances, in FIPB clearances, I think we've made a considerable headway. States are doing their little bit. And some of the states have also realized that those who ease in business systems in India are probably going to benefit more as far as the investments are concerned. I think the third important area was to eliminate discretions of all form, to eliminate person-to-person contact and allow systems to take decisions. And I think our decisions with regard to allocations of natural resources and other government largesse, where discretions have now completely been eliminated and everything is to be done on basis of a policy, which means a market mechanism or a bidding system which is transparent. It gets better revenue from the government. For the government, it also adds to the satisfaction as far as the investor is concerned, appears to have helped. A lot of laws have been straightened out as far as these areas are concerned. One of the more important areas had to be to bring India's taxation system compatible with global standards. And therefore, we are now working on a direct tax system where we want to put the disputes behind us. We want people to clean up their tax issues. And therefore, in this budget also, I have suggested various windows of clearing up all pending disputes and to bring down India's corporate tax gradually to a fair international level, which will involve no discretions, no rent-seeking exemptions, phasing all of them out gradually, and then bringing the taxation rate at a flat 25% as far as corporate tax is concerned. And that's the area in which we are now slowly moving. Indirect tax, that's an important challenge to ease in systems. And therefore, the one uniform common tax for the whole country, a goods and services tax, which converts India into one big market and allows the transfer of goods and services to take place across this very large market, is pending before Parliament. And I'm quite certain that it's reasonably moving towards a situation where we should be, sooner than later, be able to clear this in the upper house of India's Parliament. Now, having done this, you have still several other challenges to face. We have a problem with a stressed private sector, and therefore, which has resulted in the twin balance sheet problems of both companies as also public sector banks. I think this is an important challenge which we have, which we are currently facing by recapitalizing our banks, addressing the sectors which have caused distress as far as the banking institutions are concerned. And I think one of our main areas was to concentrate on two significant areas. One was the agricultural sector, and the second is infrastructure. Now, both these sectors really hold the key. As far as agriculture is concerned, since it was a stressed sector over the last 2 years, we've used the current opportunity in every way to pour in investment as far as these sectors is concerned. So in the agricultural sector, from increased spending on irrigation to a large amount of credit offtake to a very large amount of assistance in terms of interest subventions, crop insurances, I think this is a sector which needed actual support, and therefore the emphasis of recent policy has been to concentrate on this sector. We've also utilized the regime created by low oil prices, resulting in a large amount of savings for the government, to start investing as far as infrastructure is concerned. So the highway program is back almost with a bang. Rural roads we are concentrating on. Railways has undertaken a massive investment program. Airports, we are expanding the number. Ports, we are increasing the number. And this is the direction in which we are taking the economy. I'll just sum up my opening statement and leave a lot more time for interaction, that all this has resulted in basic parameters, the macroeconomic figures as far as the economy is concerned, to be significant. Despite a global slowdown, we've managed to maintain a 7.5% growth rate. All our parameters in terms of current account deficit, these are all very acceptable figures which we've reached. And I'm reasonably certain, as the global push to the economy slightly improves, hopefully we have a better monsoon. Therefore, these figures could look even better in the years to come. Now, this is the direction which is being given, and I'm sure in the course of the interaction, there'll be a large number of questions which will enable me to clarify each one of these areas significantly more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a most interesting and thought-provoking address today. I'm very sure that all of us who are in this room have benefited from the insights which you have shared with us. Ladies and gentlemen, as the minister has just pointed out, he has kindly agreed to take a few questions from the floor. May I request you to please raise your hand before you ask the question. Please identify yourself before you ask the question. And please allow me to call you so that we have some order in the house. The floor is open. Gentleman right here in the middle. Can I have the mic here?
Good afternoon, sir. It's great to see you here. Today is my birthday, and the second, I've got a great birthday gift while I'm conversing with you. Sir, my name is Arun Jaitley. I'm from Chandigarh. I work as a sustainability consultant in Sydney. My question is, like Modi ji came last time, and he said that India doesn't need more of a money from expats, but India would need skill import from the expats. And as you said in your lecture, like the opening of economy would attract both opportunities and challenges. And these opportunities and challenges would be addressed by a good skill back in India, how you grab skills, how you attain those skills. As an individual or a small business owner, for me, it's not me only, not my question. It's a question of general people like myself. The access points to deliver our skills back in India, how we can do. Look, we are trying it hard from here, but unfortunately, the access points are not still available. If we could find a right route and right organizations where we can go and get the information and share what we can do, or so that would be, I believe, beneficial for us and the country itself. Thank you.
You see, just on a point of information, These days, every government department, including secretaries, including officials and ministers, there's a huge amount of information available. And it's available not only in public space, it's almost, it's available on the net, it's available on social media. In fact, most ministers are now so well connected that even if you made a query to them personally on the social media, you'll get a response to your answer. That I don't think is a very serious problem. The issue of skills in the Indian context, investment capital and skills are not a substitute for each other. We probably will require both. You see, we require capital really in which areas? We require capital as far as manufacturing is concerned. Having opened up the economy and opened up various sectors, if groups come up and invest in India, investment is the starting point of all economic activity. It will create jobs, it will create revenue, it will create development, and therefore you need capital. More particularly, we need a lot of investment in infrastructure as far as capital is concerned. Now, I just obliquely pointed it out in the opening comment, but let me tell you which are the areas of infrastructure which seem to be now moving well ahead. Our national highway program is probably the largest one in the world. You have several hundreds of highways being built simultaneously. It had got slowed down. Now in the last 2 years, we've managed to revive it again. We've reached something close to 21 kilometers a day. Our target now continuously is 30 kilometers a day. And we hope to reach that target very soon. Therefore, in these projects, you'll need a lot of investment. Rural roads, important infrastructure, but government is spending. Irrigation, important infrastructure, states and center are both spending. Power is one area, particularly, even though we have power surplus at the moment, but in the long run, we need renewable energy. And therefore, as far as solar is concerned, we need a huge investment. We have one of the most ambitious programs for solar power over the next few years. Railways. Now, even though railways is state operated, in railway infrastructure, in manufacturing of locomotives and wagons and so on, redevelopment of 400 railway stations is currently on. The first 7-8 contracts have already been awarded for the 7-8 stations. So these are 400 of them going to be done. And over the next 3 to 4 years, it will completely change the face as far as Indian Railways is concerned. Airports. You have airports being built by joint venture, and you have the expansion taking place within the airport authority itself. In the recent budget, I have announced both, we have 160 airstrips in India which are not functional airports. So I've said, let us start with first 25 of them so that we can have regional connectivity. Ports. Now, these are all areas in which you require a large amount of investment. So capital is an issue. Where do you require skills? Now, as far as skills is concerned, we are conscious of the fact that as far as India's population is concerned and the expanding population is concerned, neither the government nor structured private sector have the capacity to involve all of them in jobs. It's impossible to do that. And therefore, you'll have to address this problem from various points of view. On one hand, you will have schemes, both independent and some supported by the government, by which people can generate jobs for themselves. So our microfinance scheme of the Mudra, where crores of people are being funded, or the whole initiative on startups, this is one area. But at the same time, everybody can't come to the SP Jain Institute. of business management. And therefore, you'll need to skill people. Now, domestically skilling people for certain jobs, I think is extremely important. And it is for the first time that we've created a portfolio at the central government of of this Department of Skill, creating skills. And we've identified some 70 to 80 such skills where different departments of the government, various other agencies are involved. Now, how many drivers does India need? How many plumbers does India need? How many electricians does India need? Now, all these technical training institutes to be set up of skills of this kind. Today, your beauty salons are going to be opened in small Mufassal towns also. And therefore, the kind of skills required for that. And therefore, you have to generate a whole body of people so that they, instead of just being job seekers in the market, they have enough to employ themselves and probably create a job or two in the entire process. And that's the entire emphasis to the economy which in this area is being added. And I think the Prime Minister's statements when he made here on skilling is not merely using people of Indian origin to come back to India and offer skills, but to skill this very large volume of politicians, of people that we have in India.
Can I have the second question from here?
Honourable Minister, thank you so much once again for taking up your first official speaking engagement here in Australia with SP Jain. I'm a student of the Bachelor's in Business Administration program. In fact, I'm a part of the first Tri-City batch to graduate in April 2016. My question to you is, we're very happy that the GDP growth rate is really high, but would GDP per capita growth be a more important measure because it takes into account the skills development of the people of India? Would GDP per capita growth be a more better measure to look at because that takes into account the skills development of people of India?
See, my response would be quite similar to what I've just said. India's GDP would only be one indication. And at times it could even be a lopsided indication. For instance, in the current case, what is India sustaining its GDP on? It's sustaining it on a lot of economic activity generated by the state because public expenditure has increased. Foreign direct investment has increased. Urban demand has significantly increased. But we'd like it to spread. And the spread, for instance, the first area which has to improve, the two obvious areas, one is private sector participation in a big way, rural demand increasing, which will also depend on monsoon and agriculture and how much investment we are able to put into the rural areas. And thereafter, if the entire impact of government's reform program and spreading the base of the Indian economy, now if this expands, each one of them is going to add to the growth story. And therefore, rather than just have a numerical, you can actually see a greater spread of prosperity. And I think in that sense, it'll become more meaningful, rather than just being driven by a few basic thrusts at the initiative of the state.
Ma'am, yeah, on third row. Can you have the mic here?
Thank you. Rekha Bhattacharjee. I write for the INS and the Indian diaspora. Welcome to our city. I've been reading about the economy, and this morning I thought I wanted to write out a question for you, so it's pretty long. I'd like to ask a question on the concealed and disguised unemployment in India's rural sector. Are you planning to address this massive problem? And is there any plan to utilize the surplus workforce for the purpose of economic development of the country? To address this issue, how much will your government invest in the rural infrastructure? What plans your government has to promote private sector to develop agro-industry in rural areas? Will your government continue supporting the employment guarantee scheme, which generates employment among the poor?
You've asked several issues into one. Let me answer the last two that you've raised. You see, there were concerns about the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, the manner it was originally structured. There were critical comments, including some which I had made at that stage, which really implied that these schemes have to be asset creating. These schemes can't be dehorse any asset creation because you are putting in a large amount of investment into these schemes. As a matter of fact, because of agrarian distress, not only have I continued the scheme, but I have improved upon its size. For instance, if we spend the entire money I have allocated this year, this would be the largest ever allocation to this particular scheme. But we've made significant changes to it. And one of the changes is we've linked it up to things like creating water bodies, etc., which are important as far as irrigation is concerned, so that this results in some form of asset creation also. You just don't want to dig pits and fill them up and say, I've created a job in the process. If you are able to create an asset as a result of this, I think that itself is a good indication. As far as food processing is concerned, some people believe that 25% of what we produce gets lost because of inadequacy in the processing industry, the cold chains, etc. Even though governments had given a lot of incentives for cold chains in the past, they didn't succeed. And one of the reasons they didn't succeed was that there was no electricity in the rural areas, or inadequate electricity. Now, fortunately, we've now entered a phase where we have surplus electricity. So therefore, currently, that's not, the electricity is not a problem itself. I have made a very important change in this year's budget that I have allowed in this sector 100% foreign direct investment. And therefore, if what is produced in India is to be processed, then manufactured and then sold in India, I have allowed full 100% investment because we need monetary resource not only from India but from anywhere in the world, because this will be investment in agriculture itself. Food parks in India have had limited success. Only some seem to have succeeded. And therefore, now that we've opened it up for greater investment this year, there is a need to make these food parks successful, that the processing can take place, because that is eventually utilizing what is produced by the Indian farmer. We've now developed different instruments for funding the farmer. Rural credit, interest subvention, irrigation, electrification of all villages in India. Now, each one of these programs is intended to build rural infrastructure. We now also have a massive program for rural housing, rural toilets. Now, this entire campaign which is taking place is actually to provide urban-like facilities to the extent possible in India's rural areas. But nonetheless, a lot of people are going to come out of villages because agriculture is not enough to sustain such a large amount of population and get into other sectors like services, like manufacturing, etc. That's inevitably bound to happen. That's leading to the creation of these suburban townships as far as the country is concerned. And this entire thrust on creating structured jobs, both through generation of economy as also the self-employment that I've indicated, is actually steps which we are taking in this regard itself. That's the concentration. We are conscious of the fact that everybody won't be able to get jobs, and therefore you must allow people enough space to create employment as far as they themselves are concerned.
Can I have the next question from the gentleman in the back? Yes. Please pass the mic, yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Susai Benjamin. Before coming here, I read about your background. Absolutely impressive, fantastic. Your life started at St. Xavier's School in Delhi and so on. So welcome to Sydney. I'm a lawyer. I work for the state government in the Department of Finance and Services and Innovation. We collect tax. That's what we do. As a lawyer, I saw this piece of paper in the folder that was given to me. You have conducted so many things, including legal reform. So I've got two questions, short and sweet. The first one is that how could we improve the legal system in India? Because in the state of New South Wales, in Australia, every year lawyers must get a practicing certificate to practice as a lawyer. Otherwise you can't. There's a regulatory mechanism in place. I was admitted in Madras in Chennai, now Chennai of course. You get admitted once, you're a lawyer forever. This is not on. That's my view. Because the people must face the regulatory body every year, and also that contributes the money for the Bar Association of, say, Tamil Nadu, because the buildings are terrible condition. So that's one suggestion that I make. The second one, when the Prime Minister attended this big meeting here in this area, I was invited to meet him. I met him, and he
Excuse
gave me...
me, sir. Please, we are running short of time. Please just...
The second question is about whether India could be a signatory to the Hague Convention, because I run a legal service, free legal service, called the Twin Gabi Legal Center. Number of people are complaining about the abduction of children from here to India without the authority of the other party being the mother or the father, or the federal court. So how could the India consider signing up to the Hague Convention and creating a central agency in New Delhi for protection of these people? It's a major issue. Thank you very much.
Well, I have not examined the second issue itself, but I'll take note of what you have said. I'll find out. But as far as the first is concerned, there is now a considerable debate on whether during the course of your profession, training programs must be on. But I don't think anybody has raised this issue, or people are thinking in terms of renewing licenses regularly, because you may still have a lot of people who are licensed to practice but actually don't practice. And therefore, whether they should remain on the register or be knocked off, it's a valid point that you've made. But I think it's for the legal fraternity, because it's a self-regulatory mechanism in the bar councils for them to initiate a reform. Now, this is not a kind of a reform which the government itself will be able to impose in India.
We still have a lot of hands rising up, but since we are running out of time, we take the last question, sir, with your permission, from one of the students here. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, the Honorable Mr. Jaitley. I, Alan Alpha, an AMBA student, would like to welcome you on behalf of my fellow students and colleagues. I would also like to thank you for taking my question. Knowing how busy your schedule is, I will get straight into the question. In a world where there is an oversupply of manufactured goods, why will companies participate in Make in India? Thank you.
Can you repeat?
In a world where?
Sure. In a world where there is an oversupply of manufactured goods, why will companies participate in Make in India?
I think there are several good reasons for it. The first one itself is the size of the market itself. Now, the size of the market is 1/6 of the world population. And for any manufacturer to get a market of that size is not so easy. So India provides you with that market. India provides you also with a lot of good human resource as far as the country is concerned. In terms of trained manpower, in terms of skilled engineering force, I think there's a ready-made availability. Where we need to improve ourselves, and that's a trend now which is world over, and that's what we missed in the first place, is to also become a hub as far as low-cost manufacturing is concerned. Now we lost out to some Asian economies, particularly to China. We became a low-cost services provider, but didn't become a low-cost manufacturer in the first instance. And I think now that the salaries of competing economies have significantly gone up and added to their cost, I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us, because people are looking for a manufacturing hub other than China. And the wage structure now is reasonably favorable to India. And therefore, with skilled manpower, large market, a competitive wage structure, if we can really concentrate on this one area, I think the possibility of India becoming the alternative manufacturing hub does appear to be plausible.
We've come to the close of the Q&A session. I would like to thank the Honorable Minister for patiently answering all the questions that's been raised. May I request you to give another round of applause. May I now request Dr. Suzanne Looms, Head of Campus, to come and deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Consul General. You did a fabulous job as a moderator, so much appreciated. Thank you. Honourable Minister Jaitley, I know I speak on behalf of everyone here in the Leadership Hall today. It's been a real honour and a real privilege having you speak at SP Jain, so thank you. Today will certainly go down in the history books of our school. Thank you for sharing with us how the Indian government is addressing global challenges and what is required to reposition India, and some of this insight into the strategies that will drive growth. Honourable Minister, it's not every day that we get an opportunity to hear from someone with such passion, energy, and absolute commitment to the success of their country's economy and a sustainable future, so thank you. We would also like to thank the Indian government, in particular the High Commissioner and the Consul General, for allowing us to host the event today. We would also like to thank the Confederation of Indian Industries and our local partners, AIBC and Ernst & Young, so thank you. We really look forward to working closely with the Government of India for future programs, including the mega cultural event planned later this year. I would now like to invite Mrs. Bapsi Jain and two of our students, Shreya and Tux, to the stage to present a small gift to you, Honourable Minister, as a token of our appreciation and in hope that you will remember your visit to SP Jain. That concludes the formal proceedings. We would like you to join us for lunch. Oh, sorry. Yes, that concludes our formal proceedings today. We would like you to join us for lunch in the open area outside the Leadership Hall. If the audience could remain seated, please, while the official party leaves the room. Thank you.